Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Daily Update on 1000 Days Challenge. This is day 673, so let's get things started. Alright, so first and foremost, balance remain the same, no change in terms of that. I'm actually in the midst of relaunching my experimental trade setup, so I'll be updating a couple of the trades that I've already started taking in terms of that. But of course, right now, I still is a little bit of experimental here and there. I wouldn't say it's launched officially because I'm just testing trade here and there, and then understanding how the dust goes, doing a little bit of back testing, getting a little bit more confident before I actually do mess into defining what sort of markets that I should be trading and in what kind of scenario should I not be trading in the particular scenario. So still a little bit of fine tuning needed, especially in terms of taking stop loss, where to put the stop loss, where to take the profit, what sort of take profit strategy should I go along with in that sense. All right. But other than that, the concept that I do have for this new trading strategy will be a little bit more different. Reason being is on a shorter time frame, the key thing that I do notice that when I try to adopt the same kind of a trading strategy on shorter time frame, it gets actually heavily disrupted as I do see the amount of noise that does tend to happen to trigger the stop losses tend to be more visible in that particular perspective. Mainly because of a lack of liquidity or lower liquidity on shorter time frame itself. Does means that each of the candlestick just means a little bit less, and this gives rise to much more easily triggered kind of stop losses, etc. And in addition to that, with the increase in terms of the trading fees as well, you also got to be looking in terms of various ways to actually manage your stop loss or your entry point in terms of looking for pullbacks. Because previously, my main trading approach was to look for trending the market, looking for a clear pullback pattern, and then the break of a pullback pattern itself before I enter along or short setup in a particular direction or trend. But the issue with looking for pullbacks is that pullbacks may never come, or there may be a lot of false breakout when it comes to pullback wise, especially on the shorter time frame basis. Alright, so I'll talk more about it along the way when I try to learn more and understand more in terms of trading on the shorter time frame. Because previously my understanding was that trading on the longer and shorter time frame does share a lot of similarity, but again, it also does share a lot of dissimilarity or differences in the sense that in terms of the percentage move wise, it's a lot less. So in terms of the commission fees and transaction fee wise, it's significantly more, both in terms of the percentage wise and also in terms of the frequency of the trades that you take, which leads to a much greater kind of absolute kind of trading fees that you do have to pay. So there's something to bear in mind. And yeah, other than that, if you look in terms of weekly close itself, what we do see in terms of S&P 500 is very nice green bullish candlestick for S&P 500 Nasdaq. So potentially we could have a continuation towards the bull run, but that is provided we do see some sort of clear confirmation whereby we actually break above last week or this week high itself. So until that has taken place itself, it could still without a doubt be some sort of like a fake kind of a green bullish candlestick itself whereby we break to have a very nice green candlestick and then the week we close and then the week we open itself, we actually open near within the range itself, and then we didn't actually break to a new high, which in which case shows a lack of buying pressure or momentum in that sense. And then for ASHR and KBAB, I'm a little bit more concerned, especially for ASHR itself, because it seems to be forming a very nice rising bearish wedge, which by nature is a very bearish market structure or pattern formation. Reason being is price is actually being pushed forward, but not in a sustainable manner, especially when you look in terms of macroscopic speaking. On a zooming out view itself, we do see that we are forming a very nice upslope, but it doesn't seem very sustainable simply because the base is not very strong. And the reason why a rising bearish is not very strong is because that the amount of buyers that forms the bottom, which will potentially be willing to sell, isn't as high. So there aren't much time given for the buyers to actually accumulate and build the base before looking for much taller tower. It's basically that we're trying to build a building or a very tall building itself, and then you have a very small little base because you have much time to build, but your objective is just to build as high as possible, in which case your tendency for the building to collapse increases significantly compared to when you have a situation whereby you have a much longer time to build, and then regardless of the direction you build towards the upside or the downside itself in terms of digging a basement, you'll be a lot more structured and much stronger in that sense. All right, so with that analogy of putting aside, finally we got Bitcoin itself. The key thing on the weekly chart is that we do seem to be potentially supported at the 150 simple moving average. So bear in mind that, one thing that I want to mention is for Nasdaq itself, it forms a very nice green bullish engulfing candlestick on the weekly chart, and that coincides with the exact same pattern that we did see in the year March 2020, which is just around 2+ years ago. So without a doubt, this could be a very significant bounce in the coming weeks. Okay, you can see here a big bearish candlestick and then the green and bullish engulfing. Similarly over here, Then similarly form a red. So the key thing over here is when we do break one next week to form some of the keys candlestick, some of the keys candlestick I want to mention, we want to break over these high and over this high as soon as possible. So definitely if we do can actually gap up and open a little bit higher, that could without a doubt a shift in terms of momentum as well. So that's something to bear in mind. And then as for Bitcoin itself, we do still see potential support over here, but bear in mind that previously even though we see some support over here, we did went up instead of finding a new high, which means we could go up to as high as even the 36 or towards a 20 exponential moving average on the weekly chart, and in which case we could potentially face a rejection and see a further down low as well. Alright, so right now, definitely I still lean towards a potential bullish momentum short-term wise of Bitcoin. Reason being is we have a 9 great consecutive bearish candlestick itself. So it's only a matter of time to how much you can actually push it down before the buyers does step up in that sense. But of course, you can see over here we have 8, we have 1 red before we actually continue up in that sense. So we could of course also form 4 red, 9 red, and 1 green candlestick that we close this way, and we can still without a doubt form the lower low thereafter as well. That again could without a doubt still be another possibility. So let's see how things goes. Definitely on the weekly or daily chart itself, I don't see any good setup simply because of the fact that price is still remaining good here. There isn't much of a reason for me to enter a long if you're talking about intraday trades in terms of perspective wise. So if you're looking for short wise, like what I mentioned, I'm not entirely keen to look for short simply because of how bearish we have been. And for certain exchanges, the funding rate is extremely low, meaning to say the fact that the number of shorts is definitely on the higher side of things, which results to the fact that the shorts are actually needing to pay the longs, which is not the norm in the market that is more neutral or more bullish in that sense. Alright, other than that, that's more or less about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to provide your comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.